The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, ruling that former National Commissioner of Correctional Services, Fraser's decision to place former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole was unlawful and has ordered that he should return to jail. For more on this now, we're joined by Karinda Jagmohan, our reporter who covered this particular story extensively when it unfolded back in July. Karinda, take us back to those early days and, more importantly, what happened after the former president was placed in jail, and what might be the reaction to this news by those who have always stuck to the side of the former president.
Just reading the court order, we see now that the decision has been made by the court for Zuma to return to the custody of the Department of Correctional Services. Now, Zuma has been at his Nkandla homestead on medical parole for a few months now, since he was released on medical parole. But I'll take you back to July when we saw that court order handed down. We saw about a week of touch and go with various allies of Zuma actually going to the Nkandla homestead saying that they're ready to defend Zuma with their lives. And now we're hearing from the ground, some of his allies again have just overheard one person actually say that they will continue defending Zuma. It seems that now the plan is to take this forward to appeal to the Constitutional Court, to higher authorities essentially. What we see here again is Zuma's unwillingness to abide by these orders and his appeals that he has been making that ultimately led him to be released on medical parole. But now, just to take you back to July, I mean, we started at the Westville Correctional Center on the night that he was supposed to hand himself into the Department of Correctional Services custody. And instead, overnight, we heard that instead he was going to go to the Escort Correctional Center. And really, it was at really the 11th hour, Thursday morning, that we saw several cars, a convoy carrying Zuma, come into the Escort Correctional Center. And he served a few days behind bars there before, of course, we saw then his release from the Escort Correctional Center. But in the aftermath of that, we saw a number of protests take over. We saw some starting at Durban on the Friday after Zuma had handed himself over to authorities. And then a week later, further protests that ultimately led to the unrest across KwaZulu-Natal. So this was the aftermath essentially of Zuma being incarcerated. It's interesting to see from police what their reaction will be, whether they will be standing on high alert now, especially in this province. It is Zuma's stronghold when it comes to political support, whether they will be on high alert for any protests that may take place in the aftermath of this now that Zuma must return to jail. At this point, and as I read the order being granted by the High Court, there's no essential time frame at this point on when Zuma should be handing himself to the Department of Correctional Services. He has been ordered to pay the cost of the act. Among other orders that were made, it ultimately says that the decision of Arthur Fraser to place Zuma on medical parole that was taken on 5th September is reviewed, declared unlawful, and set aside. So until we see Zuma making any further appeals, it seems that he must now be on his way then back to the Department of Correctional Custody.
Karinda, let's try and frame this politically now, and more recently we saw a section, and I use those words very advisedly, a section of councillors from eThekwini driving to Nkandla to essentially thank the former president for what they said was good leadership, because as the reports have gone, he may have been instrumental in making sure that the ANC retains the eThekwini Metro after it became a hung council post the elections. And you will know, Karinda, that the current mayor of eThekwini, who was re-elected, of course, was the subject of much talk in the July unrest, or should we say during that period, because he stood by Zuma and many people condemning him to say, you should be concerned about the state of affairs, the state of the economy of that particular metro. And here you are talking about how the former president should be released from jail. What does that say about your adherence to the rule of law? How much does this decision complicate the lives of the provincial leaders?
So essentially, what we're seeing now is political factions come into play. We know in KwaZulu-Natal we have seen a number of political factions. The ANC is largely divided between what we've called the Zuma faction. And so this is some of the challenges that will come into play. Many of the political members of the ANC eThekwini branch are aligned to the Zuma faction. Zandile Gumede was among them. We've seen her support there, Xolisi Kaunda as well. And of course, we know that the eThekwini, now deputy mayor, the APC's Philani Mavundla, has been a long-time former president. So at this stage now, really seeing the deep divide of political factions within the ANC, and how, you know, decisions must be made on whether there must be calls to support Zuma or calls for Zuma to abide by the court orders that have been set down calling for him to return to jail. It's going to be interesting to see how these political leaders follow that and what decision they make going forward. Again, I think what is going to be, of course, the concern here is now what will the reaction be, especially by the law enforcement authorities in KwaZulu-Natal, especially because we have seen in the past, just a few months ago, the incarceration of Zuma leading to devastating protests across the province. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not now, following this court order, if authorities are indeed on high alert, and perhaps also leaders on alert to assure that their members, their allies, do not further embark on protests that will obviously completely turn around the economy and cause further chaos and damage.
All right. Karinda Jagmohan, thank you very much for that background into what happened, particularly in the lead-up to the incarceration of the former president and the effects thereafter once he was ultimately taken to jail.